now is Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt, who filed the original lawsuit while serving as Missouri's AG. Also with me from the original medicine cabinet, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, one of the original plaintiffs on the case. Senator, to you quickly. Now, today the government told the court that the line into coercion was not crossed because they never threatened anyone. What's your response to that?
Well, the power that they wield, and I think what's important here, the context, Laura, these big tech companies have Section 230 protection, right? That was clearly at play as they were telling them what to take down. They created special censorship portals. They had weekly meetings. So the government was very interested, and you heard in that clip, there's no pandemic exception in the Constitution. People have a right to speak their minds, and the government can't outsource censorship like they did here to big tech giants, which is exactly what happened. Whether it was the lab leak, mask efficacy issues, origins of COVID, all those things, the government was very interested in wielding a lot of power, threats of investigation, Section 230 protections, all that stuff on the line with the full force of government if they didn't do their bidding and censor speech.
Dr. Bhattacharya, I mean, you and I, Ramin Asqui, God rest his soul, a few others obviously were saying stop this madness about masks and the push against children. It was obvious early on in that early Italian data that children were not going to be the main, not even close to being, really, really affected by this.
Yeah, I mean, there was data from all over Europe. It was very, very clear. I mean, that's the main point, Laura, that I want to emphasize. It was the government that was the primary source of misinformation during the pandemic. The First Amendment would have protected us against the government misinformation had it been operative during the pandemic. The argument in the Supreme Court today was so frustrating to hear because it was as if the Supreme Court justices lived through a different pandemic where the government didn't say that masks stop the spread of the virus. The government didn't say that vaccines stop you from getting and spreading COVID. The government didn't say that there's no such thing as natural immunity.
When we knew, Senator, that a lot of these mitigation measures over history, medical history, did not work. I mean, sadly, there's another piece I think that you might have sent me on email. That those mitigation measures, as well-intentioned as some of them may have been, they traditionally don't work with this type of virus. That it sadly has to go through a population, and sadly, people who are vulnerable are going to be worst hit, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and that's the problem of when you put the quote-unquote the experts or the science. We took Anthony Fauci's deposition, and they were very headstrong about what their point of view was. It doesn't give them the right to censor other Americans, which is what was happening here. You combat speech you don't agree with more speech, not censoring speech. And this played out, and look, and even those arguments, they talked about this being a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing. Well, that's what every dictator or tyrant does, right? You have an emergency, you consolidate power, you exercise that power in ways people never thought they would. And so here we are now with this very important case sitting before the Supreme Court. What is protected in the virtual town square? Certainly people have a right to express dissent. The government doesn't get to crush dissent because they think we're in some sort of an emergency. They just don't get to do that, and they don't get to use these big tech giants to do their bidding for them.
Well, we're afraid this is going to keep going into this election. And I would say, Dr. Bhattacharya, that was exactly the time you needed a robust exchange of ideas and not one person. All these people worried about, dictatorial moves and we talked about in the first block. What was more dictatorial than what they were doing to our children?
I mean, I think that is really the key point, Laura, which I entirely agree with. The First Amendment is essential to the health of our country. It's not just a civil right. It's a basic tool of public health. You have to allow dissent, or else the government, who are much more dangerous than somebody random person posting on Twitter, can go unchecked. They can close schools, they can close your churches, they can close businesses, they can tell you things that work when they don't.
They took our churches away from me. How many of our constitutional rights were abridged for long periods of time? I mean, I still can't believe we actually went through all this. I mean, I can't believe that what was happened to our children. Senator Schmitt, Dr. Bhattacharya, both of you, thank you so much.